Welcome to our new series, Hope in the Darkness. We'd hoped this would be more live and people together, but we're still in a place of kind of sheltering, and so we want to provide for everyone the opportunity to at least get into a Bible study, and you're welcome to watch this in groups or maybe talk to somebody about it, whether it's in your home or get on with other people, maybe hang out or do something so that you can have some kind of interaction with people. But this new series is called Hope in the Darkness, and tonight in particular we're going to talk really about the idea of when trust is hard or when life is hard. I want to start with a story that I don't know if it's true or not, but was told. It's a great story about illustrating this. There was a little boy that his mom had said, "Hey son, when you come in before supper, bring the broom in." And so the boy had gotten to play and all that kind of stuff, came in and ate supper. It got dark. His mom reminded him that he needed to bring the broom in. Well, it was dark now and he was afraid. He said, "Mama, I can't go out and get that. It's dark." She said, "Son, it's going to be okay. You can go out and get the broom. Don't be afraid of the darkness. I'm going to stand right here. You run and get it." He said, "But Mom, it's so far away. I'm afraid." She said, "Son, you can go get this. It's going to be okay. There's nothing to be afraid of." She said, "In fact, Jesus is going to be with you in the darkness." And the little boy was really worried. He said, "Mom, I'm just so afraid. I don't think I can get through this. Can we not do it another time?" And she said, "No, son, you've got to go get the broom." She needed it inside. It was very important. So finally he went to the door. He looked out. He looked back in. He opened up the door, slowly edged to the outside of the door, just where the light was still hitting. And he said, "Jesus, if you're out there, would you bring me the broom?" I think that's kind of where we are in the midst of what's going on in our world right now. Is there's lots of fear, and can we trust, and how do we get through this? And maybe it's not just the current pandemic that we're in. Maybe it's all kinds of other things in the midst of your life, because sometimes it's hard to trust God. There's a quote that I found that was, I couldn't find who said it, but it said, "Some things need to be believed before they can be seen." So whether you're looking at Raiders of the Lost Ark and you have to believe to walk across or whatever, there's no question that where we are now in the darkness or in fear, we wonder, can I get through this? Can I overcome? And so trust is sometimes hard. Even my own life, when Debbie and I lost our first child, when there's been divorce in the family, we've struggled saying, trust is hard. How do we get through this? Life seems too difficult. Or in moves or dealing with money issues or whatever, we wonder. I think for me, the hardest part is the idea of how do I really trust God? And so some of you are a little more like Winnie the Pooh and you're gullible on what happens. Some of you are more like ER and you're cynical about, can God even work in this? And so we struggle with that. I think about Abraham and how that he had to trust and leave even though he didn't know exactly. He had the promise, but he didn't know. And even when he gets to where he's supposed to go, there's a famine, and how do I survive this? Or Noah, who's building the ark, and God says, "It's okay, I know it's a dark world, we're going to get through this." And it took him like 100 years. I won't even wait a few minutes if there's more than 2 people in the line for the ATV. Or Mary and Martha at the death of Lazarus, and they say, "Lord, if you'd been here with us, this wouldn't happen. Why did this happen? Why does our brother have to die?" Or the disciples not understanding the cross and Jesus' death there, and they can't figure out how that works. Or the followers, and they come to the apostle and they say, "Why did Tabitha or Dorcas have to die? She's doing so many good things." And often we stand on the edge of things like a pandemic or the death of a loved one or the loss of a job or whatever, and we say, is there hope in this darkness? How do we get through? About 10 years ago, my dad, when he was still young, got leukemia, and then he developed cancer, and we began to say, here's this faithful servant of yours. He's doing so many good things. In fact, my dad talked to me and he said, "I still thought I had a lot more things to do for God. I hope that He'll take care of me." And through the midst of that, he didn't get better. He got worse. He died. And in the midst of that darkness, you wonder, how do you get through that? And then I'm left with the care of my mother, and as soon as he died, my mom is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And it gets worse and worse, and there's nothing that makes it better. We just try to make memories in the midst of it. And life is hard. And she lives for 10 years with that, and then finally she dies. And you say, what about my prayers? Where is God in the midst of this? But there's no question that God continues to answer and be there. Recently, I was visiting with my granddaughter. And to listen to her play as she's been in socialization, or the lack of socialization and isolation, she would say to her stuffed animals, or she'd say to her dog, she would say, it's okay. Things are going to be okay right now. The world is sick, but when it gets better, maybe we can do something. At 3 years old, she kind of voices what we feel, is that what can we do right now? The world is sick. Where's the hope? Maybe someday it'll get better. And no matter what situation you're in right now, does God have answers for where you are, and where is He in the midst of this? Can I trust Him? Our text is Mark chapter 9, verses 14 through 32. Jesus shows up, the disciples arguing. He says, what are you guys arguing about? Well, they find out that they've been arguing because there was a man that brought his son that it seems hopeless about the situation. The struggle of a father is, what do I do with a son that I've tried everything and there's nothing that I can do? And he brings them disciples, his last hope, and they try to do something and nothing can be done. So in the midst of this, Jesus says, well, he can be healed. But I don't know if you believe. And the father says, oh, I do believe. Would you help me in my unbelief? And so in this text in in Mark chapter 9, as he speaks and he says, hey, there is answers here. Jesus says to the little boy, to the little boy's father, how long have you been like this? And he says, he's been this way since childhood, and I've tried everything, and he's hurting himself. Can you help us? I can, Jesus says. Everything is possible to whom those that believe. And that's when the Father makes the statement. Eventually, Jesus helps the boy. And disciples begin to say, hey, we tried. We did everything you told us. We couldn't help him. And Jesus says, well, this only happens with prayer. Well, they had prayed to try to do it before, but they didn't believe in their prayer. I know that you stand right now maybe on the edge of disbelief. I know that you wonder, how do we deal with stuff and where we are? And I found that sometimes our disbelief and sometimes my selfishness and sometimes me not trusting has made the problem even worse. My dad didn't get better. My mom didn't get better. My child didn't live. People that I prayed for, things didn't overcome. But in every situation, God still worked. God still gave hope. God still restored. God was still at work. I don't know if you believe that God can handle this right now. But I'm telling you, God can help you through this. Life is hard. And trust is hard. But God can be trusted. You see, everything is possible for he who believes. And yeah, in this situation, God answered. But in Job's situation, he lost that family before he got a new one. Jesus had to die to bring good things. One of the things I know Debbie and I prayed when our child didn't make it was that we do not want to keep them from heaven. And if that's where they need to be, and then our goal then is to be with them in heaven. You see, in the midst of your struggle, God hears you, and there's hope. If you'll just trust and believe, I think He'll be with you through this. It does not mean that everything will be restored. It does not mean that everything will turn out the way you want. But I believe that God is in the darkness, and He does say, okay, I'll walk with you. There's hope. And God's walking with us. My family's already been blessed through the isolation, even though things have been difficult. I hope your family has been too. So in this new series, in some way, may you find hope. Later on, there's going to be a song. It's about home. In the midst of this idea of getting to our home, really, I'm living my life not for what happens here, but for what echoes in eternity. and I'm looking forward to seeing my child in eternity. I'm looking forward to seeing my dad in eternity. I'm looking forward to seeing my mom in eternity, whole and restored. And I'm looking forward to seeing my Jesus in eternity that makes it all okay. So every day I get closer to heaven. And every day my God opens his arms and says, I'm in the darkness. Trust me. I'll help you through this. There is hope in the darkness, even when hope is hard.
Are you disappointed? Are you desperate for help? You know what it's like to be tired and only a shell of yourself. And you start to believe you don't have what it takes, 'cause it's all you can do just to move, much less finish the race. But don't forget what lies ahead. Almost home, brother, it won't be long. Soon all your burdens will be gone. With all your strength, sister, run wild, run free. Hold up your head, keep pressing on, and we are almost home. Well, this road will be hard, but we win in the end. Simply because of Jesus in us, it's not if, but when. So take joy in the journey, even when it feels long. Hope finds strength in each step, knowing heaven is cheering you on. We are almost home, brother, it won't be long. Soon all your burdens will be gone. With all your strength, sister, run wild, run free. Hold up your head, keep pressing on, and we are almost home. Almost home, almost home, almost home, almost home. And I know that the cross has brought heaven to us, but make no mistake, there's still more to come when our flesh and our bone are no longer between where we are right now and where we're meant to be. And when all that's been lost is made whole again, when these tears and this pain no longer exist, no more walking, we're running as fast as we can. Consider this our second round. Almost home, brother, it won't be long. Soon all your burdens will be gone. With all your strength, sister, run wild, run free. Hold up your head, keep pressing on, and we are almost home. Almost home, almost home, almost home, almost home.